Não tem problema, só porque eu tinha pensado em fazer uma atividade no final, mas eu falo com a Renata. Tipo uma oração, assim.
Tipo uma radiação? Assim?
Não sei exatamente qual é o plano dele, mas é mais no final de todos os eventos, geralmente tem, quer dizer, durante os eventos tem toda uma energia e tudo, então, enfim, vamos ver. Acho que tem 18 minutos. A gente não faz uma prece agora, né? A gente só começa. Depois eu falei, inglês. Quanto tempo que eu não falo inglês assim direto? Tá em casa, eu perdi meu emprego, né? Eu fico mais em casa.
Você perdeu o temporário?
É porque o meu trabalho de maneira para em julho e agosto. Ele para, aí eles fazem uma recontratação em setembro. Só que parou em março, né? Então, tudo bem, eu estou recebendo auxílio do governo, porque eu tenho direito de qualquer maneira, não é tão ruim assim, dá para cobrir bastante e não posso reclamar, acabo ficando com mais tempo, mas é que vai passando tempo, tu fica. E agora eles já mandaram uma papelada lá para ver se a gente quer voltar. Só que assim, eles disseram que querem reabrir, vão reabrir em setembro, quando as escolas reabrirem, mas e se as escolas não reabrirem, aí vai continuar. Tem que aguardar, não tem muito o que fazer. Se não voltar, eu tenho que começar a procurar alguma outra coisa realmente, porque não dá para ficar. Vai para acabar o auxílio, não, né?
Tá live já.
Você tá live?
Tá.
Where do I look? There. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. We are resuming our workshop, Drug Abuse Prevention. We were here this morning. We had 2 other lectures this morning, and now we are having this. Thank you all for assisting, and we're going to start on time. So this lecture is called Family and Drug Addiction, Prevention and Rehabilitation. Just want to let everyone know that we are not here to give you a recipe on how we can prevent necessarily or how we can rehabilitate. As some other people told us earlier today, we cannot save someone. It's the person's job to go on and do their part, but we are here to support, and the family is usually the first environment that we are at. So the importance of the family in our formative years, it can make a difference in prevention and also as a support for when something is happening. Can I just click here, right? Okay. So just a few questions, well, not few, for us to reflect, and again, some of us may be able to answer those questions at the end of this lecture, some other people may not, but just to be there for us to reflect and to think about those questions, about these reflections that we are proposing. And I believe that those kind of reflections are so important for our day-to-day lives, because a lot of times we keep doing things just for the sake of doing. We need to do more. And sometimes we need to stop and think and reflect on the consequences of our actions, or what we expect from others, what we want to achieve in our lives. So family, why are we together? What is the role? What is the family role? Is that to save someone? Is that to just raise the kids and when they're 18 they send them their way? Or what is that? Is it possible to prevent drug abuse or drug addiction? And how? If possible, how? Can we rehabilitate others from drug addiction? And the last one for now, can we help an addict to rehabilitate? What can we do? Okay? So just to kind of bring a little bit of information in terms of family. So I just took this from the Cambridge Dictionary. So just a couple of, I forgot the word, meanings or explanations about what family is, sorry. So they have different ones that they even talk about how animals, a group of animals, they're together, etc. But I just brought these two here. So family, a group of people who are related to each other, such as mother, father, and their children. So kind of more like a traditional way to see family. We know that a lot of families don't have a mother, don't have a father, or have nowadays some families have two mothers and two fathers, or different ways. Some families don't have children, some families have, it's one person with other relatives. But another description is a social group of parents, children, and sometimes grandparents, uncles, aunts, and others who are related. So just to bring us what is a more like material way to see family. So now we are bringing some of the information that we bring from the Spiritist doctrine. So family, this is in the Gospel according to Spiritism. Family, those incarnated in the same family, especially as close relations, are as often as not congenial spirits, linked by past relationships, which express themselves during their earthly lives by their reciprocated affections. So congenial is, in Portuguese, like simpáticos, sympathetics. So basically this is saying that there are families, they are formed by people, there are sympathetic spirits, spirits that have this in common, or maybe they have been together in previous lives, so they have more things in common in a more, let's say, in a more positive way. So they are not necessarily that are here to go through trials together. But usually a family has a little bit of everything, every different kind of people. But a family can also be with people, they're complete strangers to each other, or they may be distant from each other due to past aversions, which while on earth are translated into mutual antagonisms, which serve as probations. So then we could have families there, a lot of people together are there to go through those trials and to go through those probations, to learn from one another, to help each other. Sometimes there are cases of where forgiveness is one of the things that the family needs to work, because one has done something bad to the other in other previous lives. A son or a daughter today could have been sometimes like a lover from the father in previous lives and things like that. I know it sounds kind of weird talking about that, but it's important for us to understand that the material view of family, when we incarnate, is different than the spiritual ties we have. So there are families through spiritual ties, so usually our spirits, they have more things in common, and when they are discarnate, they are more part of that spiritual family. And there's the material ones that we have through bodily ties. Okay? I know there's a lot of reading, but I have a problem synthesizing things, and I thought sometimes it's better to read because it kind of brings the whole picture, but I'll try. The original presentation was much longer, so now it has less.
You're doing great.
Yeah. So now bringing our role in the family. And when I say our, because everyone, whatever, doesn't matter which family we are at, even if we are, let's say we are single and we live alone, we belong to a family. with our parents, or could be step parents, could be adopted, could be someone that just took us in. So we are part of a family somehow. So in the Spirit's book, question 208, the question is, do the spirits of the parents have any influence over the spirits of their child after birth? So a lot of the things that we are going to hear here today, it kind of goes towards that children and parents relationship, because at the end of the day, that's one of our most responsibilities if you are a parent, to have that child under your wing and to help. But remember that all relationships in the family, that's part of what we're talking about too. Even though sometimes it seems that we're talking more about just the children and parents. So, as answering the question, they have a very large influence on it, so the parents have. And I would say that we can extend to anyone in the family. So we have an influence with the people that we are relating in that family too. As we have already told you, spirits are made to contribute to one another's progress. The spirits of the parents are entrusted with the mission of developing those of their children by the training they give them. So I just want to highlight this here, that's already highlighted, but we know that everyone, all the spirits are here we have our own way, our own development to do. We have to do our own path, we have to work on ourselves. So we are here to evolve, to practice, and to become better, and to achieve the happiness that it's so well said, described on question 115 of the Spirit's book. But we are not here just to help ourselves. We also have a responsibility with the progress law, the society law, sorry. We are here to help ourselves, and in doing that, we are here also to help the society to evolve. So I know we have to work on ourselves first, but we are not going to be perfect first, so then we can help others. We are growing, we're developing together. And I can say as a mom, I have progressed, I have evolved as a mom. I think I'm a bit of a better mom today than I was maybe 10 years ago. And I see that even the relationship with my kids is different, because I am different, they are different, and we evolve. And it is not easy to recognize the mistakes we make with all good intentions. A lot of times we may even cause some harm, but here we're all together here to help one another, and we can always make it better. So I think that's one of the messages. Okay, one more. Do I change here? So enter, right? Do you enter one?
Not the flashinha.
Flashinha. Oh, yeah. Okay. Now another text talking about our role in the family. This is from the SOS Family book by Joana de Angelis and psychography of Divaldo Franco. I highly recommend the reading of this book. It's not big, it's not too hard to read. I mean, I recommend so many. But this is quite concise, like a lot of things are, it talks about family, different things that happen, but I mean, it touched myself, so I think I just want to share. So the chapter is long, so I just got a few parts. The character, the intelligence, and the feeling come from the spirit that is embodied by reincarnation without greater dependence on the genetics ties with the parents. That's just to say that when the spirit is incarnated in our family, for example, we know about the genetics, right? We know that if we're going to do a DNA test, like if my kids are biological mine, they will have some DNA. But the spirit, the character, the intelligence and the feelings of that spirit does not have to do anything with their biological parents. It comes from the immortal spirit that brings their characters, all the development they have done so far when they come to incarnate. So that's why a lot of children, when they're much younger, they are a little bit more, easygoing, and then they grow a bit older, I can't remember exactly now, like after the 7 to like pre-adolescence time, they're really showing more their actual character. So the more we can help them before that, better, but it doesn't mean we're not fixing anyone, we're just providing opportunities. But we will see a little bit more later on. So that was just to highlight that. The family is, above all, a laboratory of restorative experiences in which happiness and pain alternate, programming future peace. That is so consoling, knowing that eventually, doesn't matter how many mistakes we make, we will achieve that peace and that happiness. Our spirits in the process of evolution, returning to the stage of physical life for the staging of play in which they have failed in the past. And during this lecture, there might be, I think there's still some times that we're going to talk about failing and things that didn't go right, or we did something wrong, or we have to remember, we should remember that we are all evolving. We are still making mistakes. We will probably make more mistakes. And I believe Luis said something earlier. It's not about guilt. It's about learning from what worked and what didn't work. I have 2 children. I can say they've been raised the same because they're 4 years apart. So of course, the younger one got a better me already because I was a little bit better. But in general, they got the same basis, and they're different kids because of their character and what they brought with them. And of course, depending on the relationships they build with friends and school and other places, because the family is not the only place where they're going to develop those skills for life.
It's not flashing.
Yeah, I think it's just like fidgeting. That's okay. That's still from that text yet, from the SOS family. In this way, blessed with patience, you should not have a comma there. In this way, blessed with patience and forgiveness, the ungrateful and embarrassed son. And when I just translated literally what they say, but I would say son, daughter, or again, this chapter is talking more about that parents, but the ungrateful, everyone, right? Husband, wife, parents, because a lot of times we blame our parents for things that happen to us. And a lot of times we don't realize this is so unconscious in ourselves that we don't, our hurt child is so ingrained with us, we don't even realize. Tenderly understands the tormented parent who doesn't match your aspirations. That's what we're just talking about. I just anticipated myself. Forgive the irresponsible spouse or the frivolous companion. Is it easy?
It's easy.
No, it's beautiful on the paper, it's beautiful there, but it's possible. And the reason the families are not perfect, they are not the picture perfect, the module, it's because we have all of those things to work together to then make it better so we can achieve that peace later on. But we can achieve a little piece of peace now, right? We can make our relationships better or worse depending on how we deal with them. But usually it takes more work to do the right thing, let's say that. Oh, I keep forgetting. Let's just put this down. It's just like I like to fidget. So you go on faithfully at the post and loving. So what should we do when we're facing all these difficulties? We can't change the other people. We can be good models. We can be good examples. Even when we make mistakes, we can recognize our mistakes, and that's already being an example for our children or for whoever's around us. But we go on just because someone is making a mistake and we are not being able to help for some reason. We still go and do our part. And loving. Sometimes it's hard to keep these good feelings when we say, how many times did I tell you this or that? But anyway, do not believe yourself directly responsible for the ordeal that strikes you before your limited child, physically or mentally. You and he or she are committed to divine codes by the past. Do for him or her today what you neglected before. Again, this is not saying that every parent that have a difficult child, it's because the parent did something to them. Could be the other way around, and maybe that parent in that case is there to practice the forgiveness. But we don't know. That's an explanation that they gave in this book, but it's just to kind of bring us this: don't feel guilty or accept your child, but do not connive. You just have to do. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. And I'm getting this again. Okay, now we're going a little bit more towards prevention. And again, prevention means that in this sense that we can do things to make the situation, let's say, a little bit easier or better for the spirits that are under our care, or that we work together or we live together. But doesn't mean we can necessarily prevent things to happen. We can work, we can prepare the field, the soil, but not necessarily we can't necessarily prevent things from happening. So this is from the book After the Storm by Joana de Angelis. This book has been mentioned a number of times already today. I haven't read the whole book, so I cannot say much. I have read a lot of parts, and it's very, very nice book too, as far as what I have read. So here what we can do to help. Moral education in the light of the gospel without disguises or distortions. Spiritual awareness without flaunting. Freedom and guidance based on responsibility. The moral disciplines from an early age. The caring vigilance of cautious parents and teachers. And I like that it says here, parents and teachers, and because the education process is a community responsibility too somehow, not the same as a family, but if we see kids in danger around us that are not our children, we're not going to do something to help, right? Like that kind of feeling that it takes a village to raise the children, right? And of course, there's some boundaries, there's some limits, but it takes a village. And if we all participate more in everyone's life, I think the world would be better already, but we're still working on our small groups, so it goes on. And the moral education here, I would like to, of course, he or she's saying about the gospel, and then we can say, well, what if the person is not Christian? What if they don't know the gospel, the Jesus? Well, the moral education, we bring with us when we incarnate the divine laws. There are in our conscience, so we can all access them. And we have a number of examples where people are morally developed and they are not necessarily Christians, right? But here we are focusing more on the spiritist doctrine, because that's what we are here. We believe that's what I believe most of us have our lives touched so much and answers our questions, helps us be better. So we want to encourage, we want to share this with people too. Okay. So that's continuing. Social and medical care and fraternal contribution, because sometimes we may need medical intervention, there may be need some psychotherapy or psychology interventions to help, depending on what the problem that the family is facing. So social and medical care in fraternal contribution are effective antidotes to the aberrant problem of toxic self-flagellation that humanity is suffering from having exchanged the values of love and trust for irrelevant behaviors as foolishness or frivolity. So for us, they're a little bit older, we may already have done this, but our little kids, they may still be here, and it's our job too to help them keep those values and reinforce the values of love, the moral values, so then when they are faced with difficulties in their lives, they may make different choices too. Here. Fathers or mothers, do not think your home will be spared. Observe the behavior of the children. Stay alert, take care of them before interfering and compromising in the narcotic and hallucinogenic clashes. Sorry, that's a hard word. At which time you can help them and preserve them. Again, it's always better to prevent than deal with the problem afterwards. But if that happens, there are still ways to deal, right? To help. But just because, oh, I am a spiritist, so we think that my house is protected. Or some people say in the spiritist doctrine, oh, I do the gospel at home every week, so my house is blinded. There's a lot of people that say that. My house is blinded. Well, what blinds kind of your house, or what blinds, sorry, not blinds, blinds your house. It's not just because you do the gospel, it's how you try to live your life, how you try to improve, how you try to help our family, because then it brings to our household the good spirits, right? But stay alert, right? So if your child is showing a different behavior, and a lot of times we're so busy we don't see, or we see those chains of behaviors as something like, oh, just trying to annoy me, or like, oh, I'm so busy now. But it's important that we take the time to look at our children and to our family members. It could be a brother, sister, a parent that it's having some difficulties, and look around, and even friends. How many friends we only realize so many years later that the person went through depression or anxiety. We didn't even know, because they're always smiling, they're always fun and cool, but when they were not so well, we didn't even know, right? And this is from another text. This is more like when the drug addiction is already there, when there is addiction to, could be alcohol, could be now marijuana, and or even opioids and other kinds of drugs. This is called, oh, it didn't translate the title, Vereda Familiar. I don't even know how to translate Vereda. Anyway, let's just leave like that. It's from the spirit Teresa de Brito, psychographed by Raul Teixeira. And it says, the children you keep at home, marked by behavioral imbalances, becoming mad, irresponsible, or cruel, are those who need your understanding and assistance. Of course, all of our children, or everyone that is our family member, should have our attention and our care. But the ones that are struggling more, those are the ones that need more of our help. And oftentimes, we just like, oh, such a troublemaker, or blah, 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 and then we kind of get busy doing other things, but we don't necessarily see. And there's a lot of studies about brain development and how the impact of early childhood experiences shapes the brain and actually changes how the synapses happen and how things change and a lot of trauma and a lot of things that cause such behaviors, like different behaviors. And sometimes it's not necessarily anything, should not be anything that bad, but it's just the relationship they had, like with families, with at school, with friends, all kinds of things. So the more we know, the more we get intellectual knowledge, the more we can understand and actually have ways to help after things are happening already. Okay. So that's continuing. Therefore, parents need to understand the situation, which does not mean connivance or passivity. But in the light of reincarnation, understand that their children, who are drug users, are demonstrating the level of evolution they are in, being momentarily ill from a moral perspective, and sometimes they may be the same souls who have deviated from the path of good in other lives. I'm going to put the next one because it's a continuation and we go today. And today, by divine mercy, they return as children so that the parents have the opportunity to point new directions to them, now towards virtues, and should assist them, love them without being discouraged. And I will just stop there and I'll go back to the next one, the last one. Here one says, their children who are doing are demonstrating the level of evolution they are in. As a parent, I can say this is so hard to accept, to understand, not to accept, but to feel, because we want our children to be the crystal child or whatever people call. We want our children to be the more intelligent. And sometimes when we are facing a life when our children are not the perfect model, or we don't have the perfect husband or wife, or parents, we need to understand that, but not to think that we are better, because it doesn't necessarily mean that we are more evolved. And if we are together, we have things to work together. And then I'll go, and should assist them, love them without being discouraged, because no investment of love is lost, being registered in the intimacy of the soul. And one day, by the divine law of progress, it will bear fruit. This is also so consoling. So, thinking about the seeds we plant, the seeds that people planted on us, they are maybe growing now. And the seeds that we can plant, and they will bear fruit, they will grow eventually. As a parent with some, anxiety, but I want to see some of those seeds bear fruit now. But I rationally understand that I'm planting those seeds. And in my relationship with my husband, I'm planting some seeds. With my parent, my parent passed away already, but I'm still planting seeds, and they are planting on me too. So no investment of love is lost. So now this is a text that I wasn't sure if I was going to bring, but it just kept on calling me. So I know there's a lot of reading, but I just find that they're so comforting for me, so that's why I'm sharing. So this is the book called Guidelines for a Happy Life by Marco Prisco, Spirit Marco Prisco, psychographed by Divaldo Franco. And it says, if surprising or if you catch your child using drugs, that's what he suggests. Try to talk calmly in a tone of friendship and affection, seeking to know the causes that led, the spirit to the child to this unfortunate escape. An attitude of kindness is worth more than all the arguments produced by anger or aggression. Seems simple. It's not that simple. It's possible, but we need to have this understanding that the child is not necessarily being mean, or they want to do this or they want to do that. There are other things, there are causes there. And when they say causes here, I think my understanding for that is that not necessarily find the root causes as what we bring inside of us as a spirit, immortal spirit, but try to listen, to hear what they have to say. And I don't think we necessarily are capable of getting the causes ourselves, but to help them look for those causes. What is the actual pain inside of them? But an attitude of kindness is worth more than all the arguments. And so my oldest son sometimes tells me, Mommy, you just talk the same thing 10 times, but he already registered. So like, well, I don't know, you don't say anything, so how do I know if you got it? So I'm also bringing my models, my experiences when I'm having these conversations with my children, right? With my husband, with my parents. They have their experiences. So sometimes we think we are trying to help them, but a lot of times we are trying to impose our views too. So understanding that I'm not right. Well, I'm not right all the time. I'm right sometimes, but not most of the time not. Or what is right and what is wrong? Why it cannot be something in between, right? I mean, what is right, what is wrong. But in that conversation, sometimes is, why does it have to be my view? Why cannot he do this later in the day instead of early? Just because I like to do in the morning something, like say homework. Why does that mean that my kids have to do in the morning like I do, right? That's just an example that's not drug related, but it's just like the way that we, with our views and our experiences, we bring this in the mix. Make him, her realize that you are open to dialogue. And I don't like too much this make, because it looks like you're imposing, but again, the important here is open to dialogue, right? Like the make is a harsh word because we cannot impose these kind of things. We can be authoritarian, but it doesn't mean that we're going to help anyone reflect if we're just imposing.
I think it's just show that you are available.
Yeah, that's what it means. Give him, her a watchful assistance without becoming a severe guard or executioner. That text was quite like a reflection for us as parents or us because a lot of times we're like this police. You're doing this right, you're doing this wrong, with this, and then like we're just bossing people around sometimes. And we are not necessarily open to dialogue because the dialogue needs the hearing, the listening. And a lot of times we just want to say, we want to preach, we want to doctrinate someone. And that's important to listen. Whenever possible, talk about uplifting topics. Instead of just focusing on the negative that might be happening, talk about the good things, the uplifting subjects. Bringing, I don't know, nice movies to watch together, or whatever it is that could be, that could bring a positive and uplifting in the sense of, doesn't have to be necessarily something, let's read the gospel according to Spiritism, because for someone who is not there, that might be like, oh, you're preaching, indoctrinating me. But you can bring the essence of those teachings, of those subjects in our daily lives. And the example that we give is the best that we can do. Good or bad. If we behave well, if we do good things, we can be a good example. If I say to my children, well, no, lying is not nice, you should not lie, and then someone calls, oh, tell them I'm not at home. That's like a classic kind of joke, but it's a way to think, oh, what am I saying? What should I do? Mom, what should I do? Do I do what you do, or do I do what you say? Right? Propose expert help from a psychotherapist. That's important to remember that there are professionals that can help us when we we can't deal with something, or to help our family members. Doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, that's therapy, that's a lot of other things that we can do when things go beyond our control. And we should not be blind to think that, oh, I'm going to do this, no, because a lot of people don't want to show that they have a problem in their family, or they don't want to see, or they don't want to show, and that's not helping the family member. All people make mistakes, having the right to recovery. Demonstrate that you too have problems and try to solve them in a healthy way. That is something that I have applied, and I can say that it does show some fruits already. But it's not that easy to accept that you make mistakes, and even harder to admit to others and to apologize for those mistakes. But it's part of growing. If we want our children and our family members to understand that they can make mistakes because they are apprentices of life, that they can still learn from those mistakes, I have to be an example when I make my mistakes too, right? Make him, her, again, the make, right? Realize that the drug only leads to destruction. Love your child in any circumstance, showing him, her, that nothing in the world will keep him, her, from your tenderness. That's the comforting they need, that the family member needs when they are going through hard times. Because a lot of times they think, I'm not worth of your love, so they separate themselves from us. And sometimes we just say, well, because I only cause trouble, I'm going to go here, there, I'm going to leave the house, or things like that. But showing that love, it doesn't mean we're going to have to accept the behavior. We're not going to be pretending that something is not happening. And it's also not responsible if we don't, if we keep enabling that behavior. So we should not enable the bad behavior, let's say that. But the unconditional love, you can always and should give and show. Not just say, but show. Always apply the law of therapy and take your time. The result will come at the right moment. Sometimes right moment can be years, can be another incarnation, could be the time belongs to God, it's not ours. We can do our part. And the last text before, well, a couple of slides more. So this is from the book After the Storm again, by Joana de Angelis and psychography of Divaldo Franco. If, however, you're surprised by the drama that has entered your home, so that's a little bit the same kind of way they were talking in the other text. Do not flee from it, trying to ignore it in connivance of naivete. I don't know how to say that word. Do not rebel, assuming an hostile attitude. That's usually that's what people first do. Denial. I don't want to know. This child has everything. Why they went through this path or this? And but it's part of how we deal with that too. Sometimes we are not ready to accept that, so that may be one step that we take, but should not be the attitude towards the problem. Talk, enlighten, and assist those who have become victims, seeking the competent resources of medicine as well as the Spiritist doctrine, in order to achieve the re-education and happiness of those whom the divine law has entrusted to you, and for your and their happiness. Again, this part here just shows us that this is such a bigger picture. It's not what we live here in this incarnation. The purpose is to re-educate the mortal spirit, ours and the family members. And then, oh, I'm touching. In order to achieve. Well, anyways, it's highlighted there. It's not showing up. And when it says there, those whom the divine law has entrusted to you, that brings a huge responsibility too. Not that we are responsible for them, to make choices for them, but that we have a part, a big part on that relationship. So here, just, that's the last one. Oh, not late. Yes?
Thanks.
No, I actually have one more. So that's kind of to summarize a little bit, and our role on the way to rehabilitation. And the reason I didn't want to say that we are rehabilitating someone, because the journey, we are doing this journey together, but every person has to take their step. At the end of the day, it's their choice. And I think Sonia said, the recovery depends on the person wants to recover, right? Of course, there are different circumstances that maybe make a little bit easier or harder. If you have a supporting family, it certainly will make it a little bit easier. If you have a family that don't accept you, it will make it a bit harder. But still, at the end of the day, the family can do everything they can. The person is not doing their part, it won't happen. The seeds will be there, will grow one day, will develop one day, but it depends on them. But our role, like to help, is just summarizing what we had. Love and show love. Because a lot of times we do have that love, but we don't know how to show, or we don't show. And people feel love in different ways. Some people feel loved if they are given presents. Kind of, some people feel loved if someone does things to them that they like. Or some people feel loved just by hearing. So there are different ways that people feel loved. And of course you gotta know, right? But you can try and error and find ways, but it's important to try to show that love, not just I love you, or even sometimes you don't even say, but you feel but you don't say. And be present. Be present doesn't mean be a police and be like following all the steps, but be there, open to that dialogue, be there to help, be there to hear, be there to even sometimes just sit beside the person. Show care and acceptance. It's kind of self-explanatory, but it's not that easy. How do you show that you accept them? You accept the person, but not the behavior, right? So that's different. And sometimes it's probably not easy to put limits, but there are limits that have to be put, let's say, in certain situations. And of course, it will depending on the family, it will depending on the problem, the level of drug addiction and the consequences, right? If someone is stealing from the house or like beating up family members, like it's different than with someone who's just using some drugs and they are not as aggressive or so. But be open to dialogue, to mostly to hear, to listen, right? We have 2 ears, 1 mouth. Don't do like Anna do and talk a lot, listen more. I'm learning, I'm getting a little bit better. Offer medical and psychological support, then what's the other word we just said? Psychotherapy support, and some depending on situation might need to be an intervention. Again, depending on the age of the child, the parents may be, or the parents or the family may be able to make that that choice for them for intervention, depending on how old they are. Like, it has to be 100% the person. But again, none of those things will work if the person is not willing to, right? But again, we can only do our part. Should not ignore, pretend that nothing's happening, and not connive. Connive is what's the Portuguese word? Conivir. So we are not going to, do the same and just pretend that nothing's happening, but we are not going to go on and accept that problem. And respect, because respect the person, respect that immortal spirit, respect their choices too. Because sometimes we can only help, but sometimes a person may still decide to not go with the help is giving, or to not go and make different choices. Everyone has a free will, and only God will sometimes, in very specific situations, will kind of withdraw temporarily that free will in very specific situations, not us. We're not going to go there because then I don't want to be late. So I guess that's all for me today. Oh, there is a bibliography. I don't know if people can read. Little letters. I just thought it was nice to share some because it can go on and get there. That's all. Thank you. I don't know if there's any questions that I can help with.
There's a comment online here from Sonia. She's saying, I agree, and the seeds will grow, and I can say that from my own experience with my kids.
Thank you, Sonia. Yeah, she helps me with my anxiety with my children too.
And I have a question.
Yeah.
Family is a very broad, sometimes, definition. We have a closer family, and we have family that we never saw probably, right? Just because of our last name. But I see that with the extended family, not the close ones that live under the same house, or dad and mom, but the extended family is a little easier, if you can go back to the previous slide, to apply this.
Which one?
Why is so hard?
This one?
The one that you were with the items there.
Oh.
Yes. We can show love and be present depending on how this is the person, care, and offer somehow even help, economic help, and etc. Should not ignore, not convene is different. With the extended family, this is not my problem.
That's true.
So why is so hard to not ignore and not convene, or not convene in closer family, the immediate family that we have?
Well, in my understanding, it's because, first of all, we are there, we see what's happening, so we in the closer relationship, it's usually our children and, well, could be other parents, other family members, but usually it's our children. And we do have a different responsibility with our children than we have to our parents, our brothers and sisters, right? And ignore, it's hard to ignore, honestly, because you see what's happening. But connive, I think some people think it's easier to connive for the beginning, like, let's say I see my child suffering because they have a withdrawal of drugs or so, and then I'm just going to give whatever, money or whatever to go get it. There's a lot of cases of that, when the parents don't ignore, but then they perpetuate that behavior. I don't know if I answered your question. I think for me it's just because they're closer, and it's our responsibility as parents. I don't know if, I'm not sure if I understood the question.
What? No, that was the question. I see is a lot of we trying to find the balance between permissiveness and also authority. Yeah. Because in the closer family, it's so easy to be permissive. Okay, we'll fix it later, procrastinate.
Oh, yes,
or
that's true.
The other side, no, I have to fix it right now, you have to stop doing this right now, otherwise you're going to be in trouble. So to find this balance with the closer family is so hard sometimes, because we have a background from previous experiences, not just from the previous lives, but in this life that we ignored and connived a lot.
No, I think I understood now. And yes, and I can say, because when you're far away, you want to deal with that problem right away, so you don't have to think about that problem anymore. But in our small, like our closer family, if I don't do this today, I can do tomorrow, because they're still here, they're still close, etc. All right, thank you very much. I'll just clean here. Use the buttons. Clean.